What's up, guys? I am Andy, and this is my podcast. So, I thought what we could do today is talk about immigration. Maybe this will be a short one here. We'll talk about immigration a little bit, and this is not going to be a long, drawn out discussion on immigration. At least I don't think that it is. Right? This is not. I'm not building a theology of immigration. I don't want to do any of that, right? There are people doing that, and everybody's having that conversation, and it's heated today, and it's heated today. I think it's good that it is because we've crapped all over our country in the name of compassion, which is not compassionate towards the citizens of this country that have actually built it. But anyway, that's just it. It's the left's compassion, and the mercies of the wicked are cruel. And it's a terrible thing what's happening. So I thought what I could do today is maybe just point out a couple things, one practical and the other historical that I just had been reading about lately, and I thought it was fascinating, and I thought it would share it with you because of that. You come across these things, and you're like, oh, that's I did not see that. I want to share that because I didn't know it before, and maybe somebody else will like hearing that too. So when it comes to immigration and these things, and not just immigration, but across the board in our country, I think we are absolutely destroying ourselves. I think we have been for a long time, but those chickens are coming home to roost now big time, and we're going to have to make a decision. We are really going to have to make a decision as to what country we want to be, right? We're going to go one way or the other, and my fear is that and maybe this isn't altogether bad, right? But it's concerning because my fear is that we just lack any and all resolve, which is unfortunate. But I feel like either way is going to cost something. Either way is going to cost blood in some respect. But we're kind of at one of those tipping points where we got to pee or get off the pot. We're going to have to be all in. There's no halfways at this point. You're going to have a clear winner and a clear loser type thing regarding not just political ideology, but there's obviously worldview behind all of these things. And regarding our nation, if you look around, I mean, I think it is painfully evident to me that we are just destroying ourselves from within, and that's not something that can be maintained. And studying history and these great empires and nations throughout history, the one thing that they all have in common is that there's an internal corrosion first, that sin and decadence and just rank stupidity that you look back on it and you're like, oh my goodness, that is just dumb. Why would they do that? And there's I can think of probably about 101 things that we are doing now as a nation that you look at and you go, that is unsustainable and just dumb. I don't understand it. But one thing that I was studying through, like I just completed my first draft for my commentary on Nahum. It's called God's Gonna Cut You Down. I hope that we'll have it out. We have a study guide going with it. We should have it available in soft cover, hardcover that we do for our commentaries, and then have it on Audible as well, which is pretty sweet, right? This will be our fourth commentary. To have those all available on Audible I think it's pretty cool, right? For having served 13 years in ministry, constantly looking for good resources. And I'm an audio guy. Like, I love audiobooks. I go through anywhere from 5 to 10 a week, depending on the week. But you're always looking for good resources, and if you can find them on audio, that's fantastic. So, but it's rare to find commentaries on Audible, so we'll have all of ours available on Audible. So that'll be coming soon. Anyway, long story short, in studying for that book, obviously Nahum is God's destruction of Assyria. It's 3 chapters of God's judgment on Assyria, and it's just a banger all the way through. It's just 3 chapters of judgment, basically. And God's goodness in judging the Assyrian Empire. And but in preparing for that book, you have to study the historical context and the backdrop. And so I was studying the Assyrian Empire a bit. And one thing I came across that I thought was fascinating that I wanted to share, that the Assyrians did differently than the Babylonians and any other nation really that I know of at the time. And you see this in Second Kings. I can't remember the exact chapter and verse, but it is referenced in there, regarding the Assyrians and the way they took captives. Now every nation, right, in ancient world, ancient Middle East, Near East, when they would go in, they would conquer a nation. Obviously, they would deport a bunch of the locals and use them as slaves in their empire and whatnot. That wasn't uncommon. But what the Assyrians did that was different from these other nations, so like for Babylon, for example, when Babylon goes in and sacks Jerusalem and Judah and Jerusalem, they bring the captives to Babylon, right? That's where the Jewish captives were. They were in Babylon. What the Assyrians would do, and what they did when they went in and just destroyed the northern kingdom, when they went in and destroyed Israel, is and it wasn't just Israel that they did this. They would do this all over nations that they conquered. They would go in and they would take a lot of the native people, and they would not just bring them to Assyria. They would bring a lot to Assyria for slaves, but then they would deport them into other places, and then they would import other national groups or other conquered groups, ethnic groups, into Israel. So you get this mix of all of these different groups together in one spot with no real national identity. What it does is it completely destabilizes a region and a people group, because now they no longer have no national identity, right? They were just kind of like a mixed breed. I mean, you see this even at the time of Jesus. They're interacting with the Samaritans, right? They were like half breeds. They were mixed. They weren't pure Jews anymore, because the ethnic lines had been kind of all perverted from all of the interbreeding at that point in time. Essentially, I know that sounds crude, but it's interbreeding, just mixed national ethnic groups coming together, right? You don't have a pure bloodline anymore. But they would do that, and they would completely destabilize a people, and so they have no national ties or identities or actual like family lineage anymore. It's all mixed, which means it's easier to subjugate those people, because now they're completely dependent upon their vassals of the empire that's ruling over them. It makes those people easier to rule, which is an interesting thought as to why we would have open borders and not just open borders to the south, but how many refugees, scare quotes around refugees, how many different ethnic groups have we been basically importing into our country unvetted? I mean, that was the whole thing back, I believe it was when Trump was running in 2016, that Obama had been bringing in so many, I don't know if it was Somali refugee. I can't even remember. Somebody's going to correct me on that, but they were importing, or it was, I can't remember now, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, we were importing a lot of different groups, but particularly one from this one spot. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. But it was a huge debate. I know I saw a talk with Ben Carson that was like, we can care for those people on their native soil. We don't need to be bringing them here to care for them here. Well, there is a distinct, I believe, a strategy in bringing all of these different groups in and bringing them to particular places. It's not like to pervert the bloodline type thing, but it is to clearly destabilize the nation, because all of these groups and people that are coming in are not assimilating. They're not being forced to assimilate. They're coming in mass, and we're just distributing them all over. And what it does is it creates a destabilized people that now are not, they're not rooted in a national identity. They're just being ruled. They're vassals of an empire. They're vassals of of the sovereign that's ruling over them, and are completely dependent upon that sovereign for their safety and security and health, wealth, and all of these things. And it's perverse. And but anyway, I just thought that was interesting, that was a clear strategy of the Assyrian Empire that they did different from any other empire, and it worked for them for a good long time. And it made it impossible to rebuild those areas because there wasn't a distinct national identity there anymore. If slaves that were in Assyria had returned, there was nothing to return to. What would you rebuild? You're now in the you would be the extreme minority at that point. There's whatever was gone. You could make something new, but it's not going to be what was, type thing. And if we're not careful, that's where we're going to end up, and probably much faster than what anybody anticipates when you take into account the massive amount of people that we've imported with a clear strategy in mind. That coupled with the declining birth rates in our country, it's not that long. I mean, I think it's, oh, man, I think by 2060 that the I saw a study that said by 2060, and numbers could be off a little bit as far as like the actual date, but that native born Americans are going to be the minority by a pretty wide margin, because all of these immigrants that we're bringing in unvetted and illegally are not having the same reproduction rate that we are, right? They're reproducing at much greater numbers than American born citizens are, and we're paying for them to do it through social programs. So we are wrapping the noose around our own neck, and right, we're just asking, when we jump off, don't make the snap too loud, right? It's absolutely and utterly foolish. Now, along with that is the cost associated with immigration. Now, I don't have the exact numbers. I don't have the numbers on me. So I'm going to be really general here, but I think you'll all be able to understand exactly what I'm getting at and how profoundly stupid this is. And I don't know what way around it there is at this point, because something has to be done, but the hose needs to be kinked immediately. Otherwise, it's another noose around your neck, I guess, at that point. But so we have all of these illegal immigrants coming into our country, primarily through the southern border, and that's been happening for a good long time. And both left and right thought they could manage that and used it. They had their talking points for it and whatnot. But it got completely out of control and off the rails when Biden took office, and that was intentional, right? The border was completely opened up, so you have millions of people flooding into our country, who, just FYI, they're not entitled to be able to come into our country. That is the dumbest, stupidest thing ever, as far as when you hear people on the left talk about illegal immigration. Oh, these people they just want a better way of life. Well, tough shit, right? Everybody wants a better way of life. They don't get to come in here illegally, break the law to get in here, to do that, and then have us pay for their better way of life. No, that should go to my children and my children's 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 children, not somebody who just wanted to force their way in here. That's not compassionate towards anybody who actually lives here. It's ridiculous. Now, can we sympathize with some of those people wanting a better way of life? Sure, their countries are hellholes. Who if you have children, it's, as a parent, you obviously sympathize with that. But here's another thing. Our country is, for all of its faults and failures, is an amazing place that everybody else in the world wants to come to. Well, how did it get that way? Well, through people who wanted to build a better way of life, people who made massive sacrifices, right? And they did so because they wanted the freedom to be able to worship God freely and to build something for their children and their children's children's children after them. People that founded our country and built our country, there's a lot of blood and sacrifice that went into that. All of the innovation, all of these things that we have, people sacrificed for. It wasn't pain-free. Even our form of government, these debates and these discussions and all of these wars that have happened in order to build our country, that happened through blood and suffering and sacrifice. Well, if they want a better way of life, and we let them just come here illegally, we are guaranteeing that they will never do that in their own country. No, you should stay in your own country and fight for that ideal. You want this for your kids? Go fight for it. You want this kind of government? Go fight for it. You want this? Go sacrifice for it. You want this? Go bleed for it. Right? And we stop all of that when we just open up the borders and let them come here. No, you stay where you're at and you make that place better. Why not use our country as a standard or ideal and see if you can improve upon it? Yeah, it's going to cost you something, probably everything, but maybe your grandkids or your great grandkids will have a better way of life, and they'll have a better way of life on your own soil, and you'll have pride of ownership at that point. So anyway, that was just an aside. So where was I? Okay, so we open up the borders. Biden completely opens up the borders. We have millions and millions of people come in. We call it compassion, which is the most retarded thing ever, because it's not to them and it's not to us, to any citizen. The only thing that it does is enrich certain people, which is disgusting. But and most of these people that came to our borders, a lot of that was funded through the American taxpayer, through all of these NGOs and USAID and all of this dirty money going to all of these international groups to pay to bring immigrants up through our southern border. Like, if you look at the mass number of people that have traveled through South America and Mexico, that takes time and planning and money and logistics. There were people involved in that to move that mass of people. Think of everything that's required to move that mass of people in different periods of time. It's pretty crazy when you think about it logistically, and you go, oh, okay, this was not an organic thing that just a few families that wanted a better way of life, took the dangerous trek through Mexico and made it over the southern border. You're looking at millions and millions of people that have done that. That doesn't just happen without a lot of funding and logistics and planning, right? You have that many people. Where are they going to eat? Where are they going to sleep? Where are they going to go to the bathroom? What about clothing? What about all of these types of things? So I think there was a ton of U.S. taxpayer money that went to bring those illegals specifically into our country to completely destabilize our country so that certain people could maintain power and the like. It disrupts and distorts and destroys national identity, which makes it a lot easier for certain people to rule. So anyway, my point is, we've spent all of this money to bring these people here. So they come into our country, millions and millions of them. We've spent money to get them here, a lot of money to get them here. And then we spend a ton of money when they're here through social programs, and not just social programs, but all of the extemporaneous cost of having them here through crime, through education, through healthcare. All of those costs, like, it's almost impossible to calculate all of those costs. And here's another thing, right, that we need to think of as a nation. And we do just an absolute terrible job of this, but we do it in our own home, right? If you do it in your own life, you do it in your own home. $1 spent on A cannot be spent on B. Right? That's economics 101. We call it an opportunity cost, right? The opportunity cost of spending your money on A is B. You can't have B anymore. And you can't really calculate the cost of B other than like the direct monetary value of B if it's something tangible. But with with our own economy in our own country. We're spending all of this money on illegal immigrants, not even American citizens, but illegal immigrants. All of these other costs of not just having them here, and housing and healthcare and education and crime and excuse me, all of that stuff. But what's the opportunity cost of us spending all of our tax money on that? We can't calculate it. We don't know all of the other things we could have spent money on. All of the money that went to that could have gone to, well, it could go back to you. How about that? How about lower taxes? It could go to education. Could go to healthcare. It could go to our military, all for citizens who actually are paying for those things. So those all go to illegal. So we paid to get them here. We are paying an exorbitant amount to keep them here. And then as the Trump administration, right, as he goes in, you have Holman and all of these guys and finally fighting against this, kinking the hose at the border. That's awesome, but we still have all of these people in our own country. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, we're going to get them out. How are we going to get them out? Well, we have to track them down. Well, how do you do that? Well, that costs a lot of money in personnel, right, to track these people down. How much does an ICE agent make every year? And then not just that, but now you have housing costs because now we have all of these illegals, all of these criminals that we now have to house before we can get them out of the country. So you have the initial cost of tracking them down. You have the cost of housing them. And it's not just housing them. They have to be in decent facilities because the media is batshit crazy and is going to lose their mind if it doesn't look like they're in like a 5-star hotel when they're being housed and all of this stuff. But you have all of the legal costs because now you have all of these legal battles going on, which cost taxpayer money as well. So you have the legal costs, you have the housing costs, you have the cost of rounding them up, and then you have the transportation costs of getting them back to wherever they're going. So we've paid to get them here. We've paid an exorbitant amount of money while they're here, and now we're paying an exorbitant amount of money to get them out. So what's my and people did that. Like they did that to our country. That's how damnably stupid we are. That's like it's just an internal rot that if you manage your own home that way financially, you'd be done. Like, and if you describe that to any individual and said, look, if you're spending your money this way, you're done. That's a system that cannot maintain itself. And we do it repeatedly. So what am I saying? Am I saying we don't spend the money to get them out? No, I'm saying we have to spend the money to get them out, which sucks that we've gotten to that point because we've already wasted so much money in getting them here, which a certain political party, and I don't think the right is guiltless either, but it is categorically coming from one side, did that to us. They did that to this country. And now it's costing billions and billions of dollars to get them out. My point being that once we get them out and you close the border, we can't go back. Like you can't go back. Like whatever we want the immigration system to be and to look like and how we want it to function, that has got to get figured out, and it's got to get figured out muy pronto, right? It's got to get figured out very quickly because you can't continue to hemorrhage out money that way and not expect consequences for that, which is horrible because we're doing that to our children's children, and we do so in the name of what? Compassion? I just don't get it at all. It is absolutely insane to me, and it will be amongst a whole lot of other things, but it will be the death of our nation. So, I mean, we can get excited about deportations, which I think we should get them out. They are not entitled to be here, and they've caused a lot of problems while they're here, and they've cost a ton of money while they're here. It's very expensive to keep them here. So we can't do that again. You can't have another candidate go in or anybody on the left or the right, I don't care who they are, and open up the borders again and think that that's going to be okay. It's just a monetary siphon. It's just sucking dollars out of our country and out of our children's hands, which is absolutely and utterly foolish. And that's just one more thing. And I think it is helpful to step back and see what's the cost of it, right? Because okay, we're rounding up these people. Okay, we're closing the border. Okay, we're deporting these people. We need to increase ICE budget. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do any of those things. That's not what I'm saying at all. We're doing those things, and they're good. And the reason I think that financial cost is good is because that is cheaper than keeping them here. That is cheaper than all of the other costs aforementioned, right? So it's actually financially advantageous to spend that money now so that we don't continue to hemorrhage it out. But if we only do half measures and we don't get them all out, then then you have both. Then you have this increased bloated budget to get them out, and then you still have them here and are paying for all of it, which is generally what happens in Washington, where things just continue to grow and there's really no resolve to see anything through to its end. And if we can continue down that route, particularly regarding immigration, you don't have a country anymore. I mean, we'll have a country, but it won't be what we love. It won't be that. We have to understand that whatever it was, it's not anymore, and it's getting worse. And immigration is one of the strategies to get us there. The problem is when we see the solutions, we should look at the price tag on the solutions, and it should piss us off, and it should piss us off endlessly. Not just that we're spending this money to fix the problem, right? If things go wrong in your home, it sucks. You got to spend money on it, right? Nobody wants to go out and spend money fixing a foundation. Nobody wants to go out and, you get the hot water heater dies or, something like that. That's not fun stuff to spend money on, but you got to do it for the structure, for the functioning of your home. There's just certain things you need, so you got to spend money on it. We're at one of those points in time where it's like a termite infestation, where if it's not fixed, it's going to continue to rot out the home, and that's what's happening. And right now, there's been so much rot. We need to rip out the rot and rebuild some infrastructure. Is what's happened. But all that comes at a cost. My point being, all of that could have been avoided. And these people that are put in positions of authority and power over us do not care about you. They simply do not care. So you have to make them let them know that this is a one and done type of thing. Let your congressman know, let your local congressman know. Let that be your talking points with friends and family. Like, this is horribly stupid what we've done and what it has cost us as a nation, not just in the initial cost of all of these things, but in the opportunity cost of not being able to spend that money on other things. How about like paying down the debt so our children can actually have a future? So anyway, bit of a ranting today. I hope some of that was helpful. I hope maybe it helps you to look at. I mean, I know it's incredibly basic, and you hear it and you're like, well, yeah, duh. But sometimes we are at a point in our nation, I think, where common sense and oh yeah, duh, those are the things that we need to see regularly so that we don't continue this endless cycle of retardery, which is not helpful for anyone. And it's not helpful for our nation going forward, which means it's not helpful for your family, which I think most normal folk get on the front end. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. I'm still trying to figure out a way to close these podcasts, these unscripted podcasts. I need a cool one-liner. If you have a cool one-liner, share it with me. Maybe I'll drop it. But until then, have a good day.